All right, it's about 1 o'clock. We're going to go ahead and get started with the next session of our Training and Technical Assistance webinar series. We've done 6 of these webinars so far, and we will continue to do them throughout the end of the year. Hopefully you're finding the content useful. If you are just joining us, if you have a topic that you're interested in learning more about today, if you could type it in the chat box. Otherwise, as we go, if you have any questions, you have a little raise hand button that you can raise, and I can unmute you and you can ask your question over the phone. Otherwise, there is a question box that you can type in any questions as we go. This webinar is being recorded, and it will be posted to Wigio within a day or 2 of this recording. So I know some people are coming in, and I don't know, I'm not seeing any questions or topics come into the chat box. So if you're having a problem with that, please let us know. Otherwise, we'll get started here. Okay. All right, so today we're talking about member management, particularly around eligibility, enrollments, and background checks. This is kind of timely as we are ending one program year, as hard as it is to believe, and starting up a new program year. I know it's nice to take some time and to really think about all the steps that have to be done to ensure that you start your program as successfully as possible. Some of these topics, many of you are very familiar with them. Some of them, there has been additional requirements added. Otherwise, I'm really hoping to share with you some tips and tricks as we go through these topics. Okay. All right. So again, if you have any questions, please just type it in the chat box. I'd like to make these webinars as useful to you as possible. So your feedback is very important, and if you have any specific questions, just let us know. I do have Jessica online with me helping to answer some of those typed in questions. Otherwise, this is Amy Porter presenting to you today. So we're going to go over, like I said, eligibility requirements and some notes on that. Everyone's favorite topic, background checks and all of those delightful requirements, as well as a new requirement that is, just like it says, it's a requirement, everyone will have to do it. We will be talking through that. Enrollment, some tips onto ensuring that your members are enrolled as they need to be and all the documented paperwork is in file and ready to go. I'll share with you some startup resources, hopefully to make this new program year as successful as possible. And we get some questions often about member files, timekeeping, and then living allowances. So I just quickly am going to go over some reminders and tips on those topics to hopefully set everyone up, answer some consistent questions, and to point you to some resources to help you navigate those topics. Also, we have our member orientation resources. These are some resources I've pulled out various places from CNCS. I know we're always trying to develop the best member orientation or the best supervisor training, so we're doing our best to share those resources for you. I often find, and you'll see throughout this webinar, that it's not that the resources don't exist, it's just that sometimes there's so many and they're in so many different places. So it's about really being comfortable with and knowing where to look for the answers when they come up. Okay. So, not seeing any other questions, just if this is going to be recorded. As we mentioned, it will be. Keep those questions coming. So eligibility, it's really rather straightforward on what makes a member eligible or not to serve as an AmeriCorps member. They do have to be a U.S. citizen or U.S. national, a legal permanent resident, and have documentation showing that they are one of those things. For most programs, they have to be at least 17 years old. In some of our youth corps programs, they can be 16. There's additional requirements that go into verifying that. But for most of you, that's 17 years old or older, and there's certainly no upper age limit. A prospective member must have earned their GED or high school diploma or are currently working towards one of the two. and they have to have received one of those things prior to accessing and using their education award. Okay, so if they have those three things, those are the three kind of basic requirements, but your program is certainly able to add on your own levels of requirements. Some want a college degree, some want a background with working with children. That's really dependent on your program and your policy and what you're looking for. But just like when we talked about governing documents, it's kind of like an overarching onion. We have our layer. You are welcome to add your layer as far as eligibility requirements for your specific program. All AmeriCorps members have to complete our eligibility form. Now this form, there's an image of it on the screen, at least the front side of it. This has to be completed totally for every one of your members. This also has to be signed and dated before or on the member's start date. This is to ensure that they are eligible to serve. So you want them to begin serving before you have confirmed their eligibility status. This form ensures that they are eligible. Also, I've seen this before, don't date this form for your members. Don't date any of the forms for your members. They should be the ones signing and dating it. We can tell in many cases, so please make sure members are the ones that are dating and signing this form. Program staff also have to sign and date them, but program staff should not be dating where members are to date the form. Also, some programs are moving towards electronic forms, and while there's not very clear guidance on whether or not this is allowed, and so if you are thinking about that or if you have questions on that, talk to your individual program officer. However, whatever electronic forms you're using, we are asking that this eligibility form is signed and dated by hand by your members and you. Okay? All right. So if there are questions on this form, please let your program officer know. It's really actually pretty straightforward. Just make sure all those little boxes are checked. This is a form that your program officer will request each year for all of your members. If you have a member who is coming back for a second term of service, they don't have to have a new form completed, but you do want to move that form forward. If they have a member file, you can move that forward to the new program year. But if they're coming back into a second term of service, they don't need to have a new one, but they have to have at least one from their first term of service completed. Okay. Okay. If there's any questions on eligibility, please type them into your questions box. Otherwise, we'll move on to the most delightful topic, background checks. You all probably get tired of us here talking about this, but this is one of the things that there's very, very clear guidance on and no wiggle room if they are not done correctly. So as Wendy Spencer says, on time, every time. Make sure that these checks that are on time, every time. Make sure that your program has a policy to conduct these checks on time, every time. Make sure that that policy is written down. It's extremely important that these policies are written down. There was a question that just came in about eligibility forms, so jumping back really quick. Do we photocopy the form, the eligibility form, and just note the form that they are returning? So we will know if the member is coming back. We'll typically ask if this is a returning member, and because we would have already reviewed that member's form, you don't have to make a photocopy, but it's a good idea to, if that member, if you're still using that member's file or if they have a new file, to some way note that their eligibility form is either in their first year's file or if you want to make a copy and put it in that form. Okay. And if you have more questions about that, we can certainly let you know. Now background checks, as we know, all of them have to be done on time, every time. The sex offender check is the first one, and that has to be done on or before the member's start date. It's a website. You make sure you type in their name spelled correctly. If they have any aliases, check those as well. Big part of all these background checks is documenting. So when you do those checks, make sure you are printing them off, that there is a date that is very clear on there, that we know when you did these checks, and that they are kept in a member's background check file that is secure and separate from the other member paperwork. Now, the sex offender check has to be done for all members on or before their start date. The Wisconsin Circuit Court check also has to be done for all members in Wisconsin. And this has to be done on or before their start date. This is also a website check, making sure that when you run this check, you're looking for aliases and that you're printing off the results with the date on there. There is a question here for members who are coming from out of state, if you have to run that state circuit court check. This is just for Wisconsin Circuit Court check. So certainly if you want to check that, but we're just asking that the Wisconsin Circuit Court check is done and run even if that member is coming from out of state. The Wisconsin State Criminal Registry history check and the FBI check. Now, if your members have access to vulnerable populations, so that's children or adults over 55, they have all 4 of these checks that are listed on the screen. If you do not have access to vulnerable populations, you have to do the sex offender check, the circuit court check, and either the state check or the FBI check. The caveat is if you have a member who has resided at the time of application outside of Wisconsin, you have to run the check for the state of residence of that member. So if your member at the time of application lived in Illinois and they were coming here to serve, you would, and they have access to vulnerable populations, you would be running 5 checks for that member. The sex offender circuit court, the Wisconsin State Criminal Registry check, the Illinois State Criminal Registry check, and the FBI fingerprint check. Now for the state criminal history check and the FBI fingerprint check, those checks should be done or initiated on or before the member's start date. So this is really important. Most programs, I know you want to try to have them all completed, but sometimes things happen that you have to just have them initiated, which we're going to talk about. Just make sure that we have that documentation and that it started prior to the member beginning to serve. Okay, whenever you're thinking about background checks, just think that documentation is absolutely key. We have to know the dates and name spellings have to be accurate. So making sure that you are really paying attention when you're completing these and that you're following through with getting them done. Now, one thing I mentioned with the state background checks, the criminal history registry and the FBI check, if you do go into initiation, we spoke a little bit about this at the PD meeting, but wanting to go a little further into it so everybody's clear that initiating is one step further than getting permission to conduct a background check. Now for your program, this may look different, and you need to have a written policy that explains what initiation is for your program. Whether or not you think that is strong enough is something that we can talk with your program officer about, but you really have to make sure that you have a policy in place that denotes what is initiation, what does that look like. You also have to make sure that you are documenting how and when the checks were initiating. Just saying that you have initiated them does not mean that there's proof that you did that. So you have to have some sort of documentation that shows the date and how these checks were initiated in those members' background check files. Okay? And as I said, you have to have policies and procedures outlining how you initiated the checks and apply them consistently for all of your members. Initiation is one of those things that when it comes up, you want to make sure that you have a system in place. So I'm going to put up a poll really quick. See, this is my first time doing this. So you'll see a poll come up in just a second. And it's asking if you feel confident on your ability to document initiation. We really want to get a sense from folks how they feel about their initiation documentation. This can help us provide extra guidance if maybe there's still some questions around this or whatnot. So On your screen, you have the question. I feel confident on my ability to document initiation. This is your programs. So you either have clear written policy and you follow it every time, or you maybe have a spoken policy that seems to work. You have a policy, but it could use work. You have no policy on how to do this, or you have no idea what initiation is, which hopefully you have some now. It looks like some people are coming in and responding. About half of you are saying that you have a clear policy and follow it every time. And then it looks like a quarter, we're getting more. About a quarter of you each have a policy saying that they could use work or have absolutely no policy. For the folks that have no policy on how to document initiation, you are going to want to do that. You're going to want to get a policy in case that you have to use initiation. If you are new to running an AmeriCorps program, this is something you're going to want to think about and can certainly work with your program officer to develop. All right. Thank you. So again, it looks like half of the folks are saying there is a clear written policy that's followed every time. About 30% could use work, 18% have no policy. So please, if you don't have one, work on it. If you want help with your policy, your program officer is more than happy to help you review that policy. All programs during the assessment period were required to have a written background check policy. Initiation should be included in that policy. We would be happy to look over your policy and let you know where you could be stronger or any resources that could make this process easier for you. Okay, you just have to let us know. All right, so thanks for that poll. So in line with initiation, if you come into a place where you have to use initiation, you can't get all the checks done in time, your candidate has access to vulnerable populations in your program, and you're waiting for those checks to come back. That's the FBI and the state of service, the Wisconsin Criminal Registry, and or the state of residence at time of application. So if you don't have any of those checks back, you need to provide accompaniment to that member while she's in the presence, while serving. That means that she or he needs to be in the physical presence of a person who is cleared for access to vulnerable populations. This looks different. It could be a site supervisor. It can't be another member though. But the big thing with accompaniment is it has to be documented. Whenever I've seen disallowance come from accompaniment, it's because people just said, oh, well, it's just part of our program. They're always with someone. But the fact of the matter is it has to be documented. It has to be documented. It has to be written down. So again, this is something that in your policies and procedures you need to have written in there. How will you provide accompaniment while you're waiting for either the FBI or state check to come back? What will that look like? Is it on the member's timesheet? Is it on a separate sheet? They have to have documentation of the dates that this member was accompanied, the hours, and who performed it. Okay, so being really clear about that. This is the thing in the disallowance guidance, so if there's no documentation of accompaniment, there will be disallowed costs. Again, as soon as either the FBI or the state check comes back, you can stop accompaniment, assuming they pass those background checks. It's just until one or the other comes back, not both, so just one or the other. We have seen a lot of programs avoid problems with this by using background check trackers. So some programs use this religiously and it keeps them out of trouble. We're trying to move in a direction where programs start using this tool. This is really for you to make sure that you are getting all of these pieces together and not going to come to any disallowed costs in the future. Many program officers will be asking for your tracker. This is just so that we can help look through and make sure that everything is in place prior to our monitoring visits. The image on the screen here just kind of shows the really bare bones of what you want in a tracker. We know that some of you have 20 members, some of you have 50, 100 members. So keeping track of these background checks as they come in or are initiated can be really complicated. So whatever you can do to make it very clear that you have to close that loop of an initiated check, or if something's not done prior to the member serving. So again, this is a tool for you that your program officer could be looking for. If this is something that you're interested in doing and you're not doing yet, we have resources for you that you can actually use. We have a template that we can just email to you, and you can start using it and adapt it as fits for your program. Okay, so before we move on from initiation, I have another little poll, because we can now with our new system. So this poll is about your program's accompaniment policy and procedure, knowing that it's compliant. So just asking, one, you know when and how to provide and document accompaniment. Two, you know what accompaniment is, but you could use a better policy. Three, you have no policy or procedure regarding accompaniment. Or four, you just don't have recurring access to vulnerable populations, so this would not come up. All right, I appreciate all the participation. And this will help give us a sense, too, on how we can support you best in the future. It's looking tied pretty much between we know how and when to provide and document accompaniment and knowing what it is, but could you use a better policy? So that is excellent feedback. And again, it's an area where if you want your program officer to be taking a look at what your policies for your background checks are, now is the time to do it. Most programs, the earliest programs start in 5 short days. So some people will have their members' background checks already started. This process is going into place. All of us need to make sure that we are doing this 100% all the time. Serve Wisconsin staff is here to help you do that successfully. So if you're on the fence and you're not really sure about your policy, send it over to your program officer. Let us take a look at it. Let us help you get it to be the most compliant that it can. All right. Thank you. Okay. So now the last but not least part of the background checks, there is a new requirement, and this is a requirement. So CNCS has put together a new training course. It's an e-course on background checks. They are requiring everyone to complete this e-course, to pass a little post-test after watching the e-course, and then to keep a copy of the certificate that says you successfully completed the course in your program's files. So one person from each program must do this. And to start with, everyone has to have at least one individual complete this course by December 31st of 2016. So someone in your program has to complete this by December 31st of this year. Then every year moving forward, it has to be done by at least one individual in your agency every 365 days. So if you took it and it's over a year, it's no longer valid. So every year, someone is going to have to take this e-course. You're going to have to document that you took and successfully passed, essentially, this e-course. You got to keep that in your files. Serve Wisconsin has added this to our yearly monitoring visit. So we will be asking to see the documentation that this has been completed. You can choose that after you take the e-course and you print out your certificate, to send an email to your program officer and let them know that you've completed it. Extra plus bonus, if you want to send a copy of your certificate, we'll just put it in your monitoring file. We'll know in advance that you've completed it. We will ask about this at monitoring, so this is a heads up. This is required. This has to be done every year. And to start with this year, it has to be done by December 31st. Okay, and if it makes you feel better, the commission has to do this too. So we're all in it together. And the course can be found on the CNCS Knowledge Network on their Criminal History Check Resources page. Now, this is a lovely page we've referred to a number of times. It's up on your screen right now. And all of you should have this bookmarked by now, because I've said it at least 40 times in different places. So if you don't, this is the page. You want to bookmark it for more than just this e-course. There's a ton of resources on here, but the e-course is this first kind of subsection here. So the new online introductory course, okay? This is the one right here. You get started. You can click that, okay? It's to help us making sure that we're doing it on time, every time. Okay. This link is here. This PowerPoint has links that will go out, and you have access to the PowerPoint. It'll be on Wigio. It's in the handouts page of the webinar that's happening now. So the webinar is located right here. When you click on it, it will ask you to log in. So you'll put in some of your information, and then you'll continue on to the course. This is just helping keep track. Again, make sure you're documenting. Everything to do with background checks has to do with documenting. So make sure you document that you have taken and completed that course. Okay. Any questions? If you have any questions on this e-course, please comment in the comment box. Otherwise, raise your hand in the attendee. We have a little raise hand button. All right, Dominique, I see you have your hand up, so I'm going to unmute you real quick. Dominique, are you there?
I think I pushed it on accident.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, hi. It's good to hear your voice.
Hi.
Okay. So that's how the hand button works, though. So thanks, Dominique, for showing that. If you have a question, you can raise your hand. I'll unmute your line. You can ask a question. John?
Hi. Yeah, I have a question. So I've taken this e-course, and I printed my certificate, but I'm just realizing there's no print date on the certificate. So
that I'm so happy
when I took it.
Yeah. Yes, you did. So I'm sorry that there isn't, but I'm happy that you asked this question, because this is something to keep in mind, not only for this e-course, but when you're printing anything, any of these background checks from online, any of your background check results, any of this stuff, you have to make sure that the printer options allow you to have the date on there, because without that date, we don't know when you took it.
Okay, well, it was really weird when I tried to print it to my printer. It took a couple times. I actually had to take the test to close out my system and do it again to get it to print at all. Since I have a copy of it now, if I scan it and email it to my program officer, they'll have a date when they received it. So that will prove that I took it before December 31st, 2016, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
so,
sure.
A couple of things on that. The certificate will actually have a date that it's valid for, so it will automatically show the date that the course is taken, and then it'll have an expiration date.
Oh, okay. Maybe I didn't look at it carefully enough then.
Yep. So that will be on there. The date will be on there as well as the expiration date. And as far as when you're printing anything from the internet, like the background check results or anything like that, and you're having trouble with your internet browser, a lot of times you'll find the date and time that something was printed either in the header or the footer of a page from your web browser. If you're ever having problems with that showing up and you don't feel like Googling the answer for it, feel free to get in touch with us, and we can try to troubleshoot and make sure that that date always shows up when you print something. But yeah, this e-course might be something totally weird, but thankfully CNCS has put that expiration date in there for us.
Yeah, it does say awarded 7/25/2016. So that is sufficient?
That is the date, yep.
Okay. Here's another question I have about the NSOPR check. That check is different than the CIB and the FBI check in that it doesn't sit in a registry for a long time before you go to look at it. Whenever you run the check, that is the date. I mean, it has a date of when you run the check. So why would that need a print date? It can't. The date that you have it can't be any other date than the date it was run.
However, it is documented on there that it was printed, it was reviewed on that date, is how you're going to document that it was printed and reviewed on that date. So if you have specific questions about that, we can talk offline, but for everybody listening, your background check results all have to have a date printed on the results so that we know, okay, you maybe received the results on this date, but you actually looked at them on this date and documented them in the file.
Okay, we'll talk about that later. I'm not quite clear on that distinction, but thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Jessica. Thank you very much. John, the NSOPR date says when you ran it. So theoretically, yeah, that you looked at it when you ran it. But you need to print it off and review it. The idea is not that they're done, but that it's reviewed. So just making sure that there's a date on there. When I go and I check, if I see the date, I know when it's been run, I know when you've looked at it. That's what we need. The problem is when there is no date on there whatsoever. Okay, and thanks for the clarification on the e-course certificate, Jessica. So something we can all look forward to doing in the very near future is this background check e-course. We'll send reminders. I know a few reminders have come out of our office already, but I'm sure we will be sending more. Again, if you have any questions on this, certainly just let your program officer know. Okay, and the last piece that I want to talk about with background checks is just that there are resources out there. There are a ton of resources out there, especially on this CNCS page. There is everything from the e-course, there are the federal regulations, the frequently asked questions. They just updated that in July. They also made it really easy to see what they updated by putting a little update line on there. They have specific guidance on each of the different checks that you need to do, information on alternate search procedures, exemptions, and then of course information on compliance. They have checklists. They have this component assessment, which is to review your the components of what you're looking for. A procedures review, some guidance on how to make your policies and procedures for doing your background checks the best that they can be. And then the enforcement. So with background checks, they have to be done on time, every time. They have to be documented. They have to be compliant. This is not something where there's gray area on. The guidance is very clear. The resources are very clear. There is this interim disallowance guidance. So if we do find something that's out of compliance, we are obligated to use this disallowance guide and determine what disallowance your program would face for whatever non-compliance we would find. So nobody likes to do that. Nobody wants to do that. So please become familiar with these resources that are out there. Make sure you're doing your checks on time and every time. Okay, so if you haven't bookmarked it already, make sure you do. All right. So any other questions on background checks? I'm not seeing any come in. If you do, you have the chat box, questions box, and you can also raise your hand. Now for enrollment. We all go through enrollment, and I hope you know about the resource that I'm showing on this screen right now. If you don't, you really need to use it. It's one of the handouts for this webinar. I will put it on, it's already on Wigio, but we can email it to you. This form Jessica had created last year, and it's a member management checklist. And really, if you use this form, you are setting yourself up for maximum success. When we talk about enrollment paperwork, what has to happen before you can enroll a member, this checklist walks through a number of items. And then here in this bright yellow line, that's when your members can begin their serving their hours. Okay, so you have to do all of these things prior to enrolling your members. The beautiful thing about this checklist, it not only asks if the task has been completed, but it also asks if you have put those documents in the member's file. Okay, the areas that are blacked out, you don't have to document. So like a member application or renewal for a returning member. You have to put it in your member file for programs. And for the interview, you want to make sure that you're interviewing them. You don't necessarily have to mark these down. You can receive applications and go through your program's process. If you have any kind of acceptance or letter or email, you can choose to put it in file. This is another one that has NA, so you don't have to. But then there's something like the criminal history check consent form. All members need this to happen before they start serving. So you want to make sure you document that you've put that in their file. And then there's a whole section on the background checks, what you need to do to complete those. Member eligibility verification, the steps needed to go through this. Okay. And then member contracts. This is another part before they start serving that you want to make sure that you have that contract or agreement with your members, that they are assigned it on or before their enrollment date. They need to know what their rights are prior to serving. Also in this, many times people put a signed publicity release form right into the contract. That's completely fine. If you have full-time members and are eligible to offer them health or child care, that request or waiver needs to be documented and in their files. And the complete contract signed by the program, dated, and filed. Okay. There's other forms that you can choose to use. This is determined by your organization, by your program, whether or not you keep various employment forms or I-9 or W-4 forms on file. That's up to your program, not something we require. And then you want to go through this final check before you enroll them. Make sure that you have sent the invitation in the portal to enroll them into the portal or AmeriCorps. So this is all the things you need to do before they begin serving hours. And this checklist then goes on what you do during their term of service, what kind of member trainings you need to document and do, if your members need to be suspended as the year goes on, and then finally as we get to member exits. So this Excel document not just has this checklist for you to use with your members, but it also has another tab that details all of the requirements here with information on why you have to do each of these pieces, what does it mean, and when does it have to be done. As an extra bonus, there is a sample member management tracker tab that takes all of those components from the checklist and puts them into tabs so that you can be putting X's down for your members to ensure that you've done all of these pieces for your members. If you're not using this checklist and you have any question about enrollment or about your member files, this checklist is as close to clear guidance in one place as we can get. I want to make a note for any of the youth corps programs that are listening. There are a few things as far as exiting for your members that is not on here, but we can talk about that separately. Okay. All right. So that kind of outlines the necessary pre-enrollment items. There are a number of them. Most of you are doing this spectacularly. If not, if you have any questions, we will be sending this checklist out. Okay. One thing that the corporation is requiring now is that members complete their own enrollment forms and exit forms when possible online in the AmeriCorps member portal. So in the past, programs have been able to do a paper form and then do the electronic enrollment for their members. That is no longer how things will work. So your members need to do their own enrollment in the portal. Okay. So if you have questions on how, or if you struggle with this, on how to get your members to enroll in the portal, in WIGIO, again, I'm not going to walk through exactly how to do this. Many of you can do it. If you don't know how to do it, I'm going to show you resources to help you. If these don't help you, you can certainly contact us and we'll help walk through. Okay, so WIGIO, I know there's a ton of stuff on WIGIO, but really, there are some really useful things here. So if you go to your WIGIO Serve Wisconsin page, go to the Folders tab. Okay, you can sort by name, so it's easier to find. In the Program Resources tab folder, there is a whole folder called Enrollment and Eligibility. Okay, in this Enrollment and Eligibility folder, you're going to have a number of resources to help you enroll your members, particularly the CNCS member enrollment presentation. It's actually a PowerPoint presentation that walks you through enrolling your members into the portal. This is another reason I'm not walking through it right now, is because there's a resource that can do that for you if you need it. Another handy one for dealing with the beast that is eGrants is the Embracing eGrants presentation. This one comes up as a PDF, but it's actually a PowerPoint also that walks through various steps on using eGrants. The member portal is one of the topics covered in that presentation. So if you have not ever seen those two and you struggle with the member enrollment, please do check them out. There is additional information on enrollments and exits in this folder as well. So I encourage you to take a look at those. Okay. One common thing that occurs with many programs as they are enrolling and their members are returned citizenship and or Social Security verification. This one's always really tricky because the system will kick back an email just telling you and the member to keep the documents on file. However, that's not really the best guidance because they won't be able to access their EdAward without clearing this, and they have to be cleared. We have to verify their citizenship and Social Security. Luckily, Serve Wisconsin has been able to work with the corporation to let us use our eligibility form as proof and identification that these steps have been covered. We have a contact at the trust. Currently it is Nahid, and her contact information is on the screen right now, but you can also find her contact information as well as a ton of information on enrollment, eligibility, just generally running your program in the Serve Wisconsin Program Director Handbook. Okay. For those of you who have not seen this handbook, it's really the most useful thing for operating your program. When in doubt, use that control find feature. You can then just type in, if you're looking for Nahid's contact information, you could type in her name, search, and it's going to take you right to the section where you need to, what you need to do to contact the trust to get your members' Social Security or citizenship manually verified in the system. Okay, so just keeping the documentation in file is not enough. We need to manually verify that status in the portal. Okay, if you don't know where to find this member handbook other than, or your program director handbook other than WIGIO, it is located on the Serve Wisconsin website. So if you're on your screen, I'm navigating to it right now. So you're on the Serve Wisconsin website. The main page, you're just going to scroll down to I want to find resources for my program. You click on that. It's the very first link in red is the Program Director Handbook. We do our best to update this every year. It's a wealth of resource, so check that out if you have not already. Okay. Let's see. Questions are coming in. Just going to read it for a second. Sure, there is the 30-day checklist, and Jessica, I'm going to let you answer that one. So if you see anything that is on that member checklist and you're like, doesn't really jive, certainly let us know. That checklist was created by us to be a tool, to be a resource to help you all in organizing and making sure that you're doing all of the components that have to be done. So certainly if you see anything that you have questions on, it's always better to ask than to not and find out the hard way. All right. Alrighty. Okay, so again, I kind of touched on this for member files. What do you keep in your member files? That checklist has a whole tab on whether or not something should be in the member file or not in the member file. Also, as I just mentioned, the Serve Wisconsin Program Resources page, that also not only does it have the Program Director Handbook that will walk through a lot of these items, it also has, if you scroll down a little bit, the monitoring tools that Serve Wisconsin uses to monitor your program. I think this is probably one of the most transparent and easy ways for you to avoid any compliance issues. One of the documents is the member file checklist. That is the checklist we use to go through all of your member files. Okay, so if you have a question on whether or not you have the right things in your member file, from our perspective, take a look through that checklist, do it for one of your member files, and you will see what you're missing and what you're not. Okay. Again, so program startup, there is just so much to cover in program startup. And if you need additional resources, again, go to our Wigio page in the Folders tab. Under the Program Resources folder, there is a whole folder dedicated to Program Startup Resources. Okay, this is actually where that Member Management Startup Checklist lives, as well as a number of other checklists that have been created over the years. Again, these are tools to help you, guide you. They are not necessarily the definitive laws, but they're checklists. So getting members started, getting your program started. There's resources from CNCS on Program Startup Guide. There's a number of resources in this folder. So it's under Program Resources, Program Startup Resources. Okay, super useful for some of our programs too who are just getting started with their AmeriCorps. Okay. So, all right. So a few quickly, I don't want to spend too much time on these, but timekeeping reminders. This came up in the PD meetings, and I just wanted to touch on a few things very, very quickly. There is the common monitoring findings that has been posted to Wigio. That kind of goes over a number of these items. Some things I want to highlight from this is Encore is the official timekeeping system for members. Okay, so just keep that in mind. We need these to be accurate, to be entered in a timely way, and making sure that all people who work in this, so site supervisors, members, understand the importance of the accuracy and timeliness of hours and time being entered into the system. One note that always comes up is members describing their service in Encore on their timesheets. So a member, they should be describing their service, but not writing a novel of what they're doing. If you want to know what we look for, is this member doing what their position description says they're supposed to be doing? Is this member's activities allowable? Are they prohibited? If a member has served 12 hours in a day, we want to know why. So maybe extra time spent at this training event. But that detail doesn't have to be a novel. Like I said, you can say, you know, lesson planning. That would be appropriate if your program maybe is a tutoring program. Or if there was a special event that caused them to serve more hours, you want them to note that on there. But please do avoid the novels. And that's actually also for your own good. And also make sure that your site supervisors, whoever is responsible for approving your members' time, knows what they're looking for. Sometimes a lot of the issues we see could have been avoided if the site supervisors or whoever's approving these timesheets are kept up to speed on what is needed. And I know that's really hard, but I want you to know that we do look at your member timesheets. You have all of your members, and we have all of the programs and all of the members. So the more that we can keep that clear, concise, and reasonable, the better it is for everyone. If you have more questions on member timekeeping, there is in the handbook in Chapter 6.8, letter H, it goes into depth on member and staff timekeeping, what the provisions, the law, and our guidance says about it. Okay. One note, this is just from common monitoring findings. I don't want to walk through all of it. In addition to what I just said, when you're exiting your members, I know we've been talking about startup, but many of you are also closing out program years. Make sure that those encore hours and those e-grants hours match. They should not be different. The only difference we should be seeing is if there is a fraction of an hour in encore. In e-grants, you always round down. Okay, so if a member served, 1,705 hours and a half in e-grants, it would look like 1,700 hours or 1,705 hours. Okay, so you round down. It doesn't follow normal rounding rules, and I can't tell you why, but you always want to round down, okay? But those encore, that's the only difference between encore and e-grants we should see. Okay, those have to be, they have to match, and that's just that, okay? And also I want to note that if you have a member who goes missing or is uncooperative in their timesheets, and you need to have a policy. Your program has to have a policy in place on how to deal with this. If you have questions about this policy or what to do in that case, please contact your program officer and we can help you in those rare cases that this comes up. Okay. Just a quick reminders on living allowances. You want to make sure that the living allowance is not a wage, that it's paid in regular increments, and that it doesn't fluctuate based on the number of hours served in any given time period. Okay, lump sums should not be paid, and you can't kind of catch a member up if they start later unless you have a different position description. Now I know this one gets really convoluted when you're talking about that, but please make sure that you're looking over the PD Handbook on policies and procedures related to member living allowances in Chapter 7. Also, the corporation offers living allowance FAQ, which is linked to through this webinar. This goes through different backgrounds, rationale, what the law says about your living allowances. It also does provide frequently asked questions on how to handle those situations in compliance with CNCS requirements. Okay. If you have questions, again, about how you're operating your living allowances, please do talk to your program officer. All right. Okay. So again, any questions coming in? I'm not seeing any about timekeeping or living allowances. So one of the last things, just orientation resources. I know we're always looking to make our member orientations as exciting and fun as possible and also as informative. Sometimes it's like drinking from a fire hose when you have a member start who doesn't quite know what they're getting themselves into, but we'll all do our best to set them up for success. Hopefully some of these resources here, these are all links to CNCS resources. They are really, really useful. Some of them involve step-by-step kind of like lesson plans or training orientations, agendas, and resources to help start your members off successfully. Okay. So again, I'm not going to go through all those individually. You can kind of peruse them and see what will work for you at your own time. Okay. Let me give a second in case there's any questions, because we're coming to the end. I know there's a ton of topics, but there's a lot to do when starting a program year. So just a few reminders. As we are all super busy right now, as you start up, contracts are starting to come back in. They will be soon all executed from our board chair, and I'll be sending them out to your programs. Make sure that you're sending in your final enrollment dates commitment form to your program officer. Also, if you have not already, please send me, Amy, your updated contact and program descriptions so that we can be ready to do that for the new year. If you have any questions on your program design for the upcoming application 17-18, you need to be asking those questions to your program officers before the 17th. And finally, my favorite reminder is if you have a great member or an alumni, please do nominate them for the ICC. I know a lot of you have already, you're talking to members and there is a component that they have to fill out, so you might be waiting on them. That's totally understandable, but we will only be as good as the recommendations that you provide. So that due date is the 16th of August. Okay. That's a whole lot of things. All right, so again, any questions? Well, we have about 5 minutes remaining. I'm really interested in knowing if there's any questions that you have. Please let us know. When this webinar concludes, there's going to be a little survey that pops up that asks you if you would like any additional assistance in any of these topics from your program officer. This can help us while you're thinking about it, say, you know what, I need more help on initiation or accompaniment or whatever it is. You can shoot those questions through that survey. I will give them out to your program officers and they will contact you to follow up with any hopefully answers to your questions. And again, this webinar will be posted in Wigio within 2 business days, probably sooner. It has been recorded. And if you have ideas, again, all of these webinars are only as good as you help us make them, so your feedback is really important. You will get a survey on that. And so you got a question? Oh yeah, when will we find out about scheduling time with the evaluation specialist? I know this is a hot topic. And actually our next webinar will be with Dr. Good. And Jessica and her are working together this week, and Jessica is going to answer that question for you, Callie.
Sure. We do not, so I just got the information about the intake form as far as requesting assistance from them. So it'll be very soon. And we will send that out to you as soon as possible. But for right now, just worry about asking questions about your program design. Those types of questions are due by the 17th. So try to get those questions in and answered, and then as far as your evaluation or any other questions you want to ask Dr. Good and her team, we will certainly let you know when you are able to access her.
Great, thank you. I know we're all so excited, and Dr. Good, hopefully this is a partnership we can keep going, but like Jessica said, in the time being, if you have program design questions, you can talk to your program officer until the 17th. I've been encouraging my programs. I know we all love you and your programs and want to help as best we can, so just let us know what you need, and we're there for you. So it is 2 o'clock, and that brings us to an hour. I appreciate you all sitting through and listening to this information. I hope it was helpful. Please fill out that. There's 2 surveys, one to ask if you want any additional assistance. It'll follow this webinar right away. And then in about a day, you will receive the overall webinar evaluation. Please do let us know, and if you have any topics for the future. So thank you all. We'll see you again on September 14th with Dr. Good. Thank you.